We had some technical difficulties, so if you're there waiting for us, thank you for your patience. But now we're here. So I'm very excited that Kia is here with me today. Kia and I met at a workshop that I was teaching about a month ago at the Chicago Artists Coalition. And so let Kia introduce yourself.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a conversation about certain questions that you have.
Yeah,
and a dialogue. The reason why I decided to record this is that during the last year or so, quite a few people whom I respect very much asked me to share with them some of my practices and some of my trainings. So I figured, why don't we just record it so that it's out there and people can go ahead and watch it and listen to it.
Yeah, I'm really excited. It's perfect for me because I have a degree in broadcast journalism, so I have no fear of being on camera.
Do you like this?
No, this works for me. But yeah, so I'm a writer and an artist from Buffalo, New York. Started out as a journalist. I think I always had a heart for the arts. I just didn't come from a family where they knew how to direct that, and I think I needed a lot of support, someone to be like, go do it, and I didn't really get a lot of that. So I ended up becoming a writer, but I always just felt drawn to the arts, but also things of spirituality, very inquisitive about myself and how I experience the world around me. So sort of tumbled into a practice of storytelling, a little bit of visual art making, but really just interested in how stories inform who we are, how we think of the world around us, and how that's such a mutable thing. But then we also feel so attached to our past selves. I definitely feel tied to 11-year-old Kia and trying to fulfill some idea of life that she had. So when we did the workshop at CAC, I was so impressed by how you were able to create this environment in just a regular room, just artists who I'm sure everyone had their own little apprehension, you come in with all this great energy, and some of us might have been more familiar with spiritual practices than others, but you really created a welcoming environment without it being pressure filled, because I've been in environments like that too. I mean, even just going to church where someone's okay, this is what you have to do and this is what it looks like, and you made sure that hey, this is how I am. If you do something different, that's okay. And I really appreciated that. And it was a really important experience for me. And I was really impressed of how you managed all that energy in the room and didn't seem, I definitely, once we finished with the activity, I felt a high of just I was more talkative, I was more interacting with people, which isn't a natural state for me. So I was really just impressed by that and wanted to learn more about how you built this sort of creative, spiritual practice, as well as how you manage your energy in those spaces, because I can imagine it could be pretty draining leading 20 some odd people through that experience and what that requires and asks of you. Mm-hmm. So why don't you tell me your life story?
So yeah, I was, when I was a child, because I think a lot of the talents and the drives and the challenges we have in our life's incarnation or path are already pretty evident when we're toddlers. And so I remember you really enjoyed being in nature, experimenting, and also testing a little bit the space between the seen and the unseen, life and death, since an early age. I was really very interested in what that meant, maybe without being able to articulate it necessarily, but I think that the reason why I bring together creativity with spirituality and transformation is that that's what I need, right? That's what I need as a person. That's what I need to evolve and to feel happy. And I know that it helps me to share that in a community. And so that's what I'm committed to do. I only teach and share things practices that work for me, right? So, and because I have lived in different countries around the world and I have trained in very free-spirited type of circles as well as in very traditional circles. I have found that a blend of the two is really the best for me. Like I really like to have some grounding in practices that are scientific, for example, quantum physics or astrophysics. At the same time, I like to not be bound by a dogma, a religious dogma. So I weave things because that's what works for me. Energetically speaking, I have always been an empath, and so the way that I test the room and the way that I figure out what is needed is in the constant act of becoming. Like I bring in some ideas and materials, but depending on the space and depending on the energy of people and depending on the weather outside, depending on the time of day, the season, right? Because if we were outdoors, let's say that day, you know, when we had the workshop, it was snowing, actually, really, really snowing. Yeah. And you and I met at the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were both really excited about the snow, but I bet some other people in the room were not necessarily excited. They had to drive, right?
Right.
So it depends a little bit, right? If we were on a tropical beach, it might have been a different workshop altogether, right?
Yeah.
So as an empath and as a healer, that is probably the first assessment. First is the energy assessment, and then is the creative assessment that I practice when I enter a room. And then depending on the context, knowing that you were all artists and that therefore most of you were certainly open to emotions, open to filtering, open to transforming the depth of human experience onto a material, medium, made me go quite deep. In a corporate setting, I may not ask people to do certain things that we did in that workshop, right? So it depends very much. So that's addressing the first question. The second question about energy management, like you brought up earlier, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
That's a real challenge, especially because I travel a lot. I move every year and a half, 2 years. At Chicago, I've been in Chicago 3 years. This is the longest I've been in one place.
Wow.
Over 15 years.
Wow.
So it's a challenge because when I come out of such workshops, I come back and I really have to regroup with myself. I don't necessarily have like a blood family here or a community that you establish over years.
Right.
And so that's been a challenge. I use essential oils. I don't want to be like, actually, you know what? If you want to like buy this and then I get some Florida water.
Amazon link in the description.
Amazon link, Amazon, come on. Tarot cards, stuffed animals, plants, and then of course the friends who are here, the friends who are far away, prayer, stretching, breathing, being in nature.
Yeah.
But it does affect me quite a lot.
I can imagine. Like I've been in environments where I might be really energized when I'm around the people, but if it's like something that feels really new and unfamiliar at the same time, when I leave that environment, I'll feel a little bit drained. Like it'll just feel like I'm trying to process. And for me, sleep is very restorative. Like I'm a stress sleeper as well. So if I like get stressed, I'll just fall asleep. Or like that's just like, I think of it as like washing my brain. Like that's how I kind of reset. But I'm really interested in how you even discovered that you were an empath. Like what does that look like? Because it's very much a hot word now, and like all these type of things are very,
Yeah, that's true.
The spiritual practice is kind of being commodified in different ways that can kind of detach us from like, what's your experience of being an empath? How did you know? What does it feel like for you?
So the memories that I have from childhood, what I was telling you before, is of me being very cheerful as long as I could be out in nature. Like in nature, because nature didn't judge me. Nature didn't judge when I was feeling down. Nature didn't judge when I wanted to run. Even though I was a girl, I wasn't supposed to run and yell. I would just run and yell a lot. But then I remember going to school and then having to wear a girly, like whatever, uniform. in Italy and sitting at the desk and just like, oh. And I remember this deep sadness getting over me, like really, and crying a lot. I remember crying a lot. And my mom made fun of me, and my sister too. They were like, why are you always crying? You're so whiny, like, and that's what would happen is that I would filter a lot of real problematic situations around me, and that it just made me so sad. The system of schooling made me sad. The harassment I saw my classmates do onto other girls made me sad. They wouldn't touch me because I was a tomboy. So, but still, like all of the system of like coming of age and puberty and what that meant, everything made me so sad. And for the longest time, I just thought there was something wrong with me, right? I thought, well, it's true. I'm always sad. I'm always like this deep and intense. And then eventually, apart from therapy and yoga and healing and figuring out things in my own, DNA and karma, etc., I started to realize that I filtered everything. And I realized it not long ago, like I'm, whatever age means, but I'm 45 years now. Probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I started to put that into perspective as a trait. Before I thought it was just me. It's like I feel empowered by the high desert. I feel excited on a beach. I feel it's very trying to be in an environment. This was just me. But then I started to be like, no, but I'm feeling things. And that's not lunacy. It's actually a gift,
right,
for my art.
Yeah.
So it did take me a while to name it, and I'm happy I was able to name it instead of medicate it.
Right. That's real. I mean, I think I am at a sort of similar space of like realizing a lot of like non-traditional things, but very much organic and just like it's on a different level of like what society would tell you, like, oh no, well then you should take this pill if you're feeling this way, or you should self-medicate with alcohol or drugs or sex or all these things, where it's really like, I call it like just fully coming into my power and realizing like my abilities and spaces and also my sensitivity, but not thinking sensitive, like, oh, she's so sensitive, and being hard on myself and being like, oh, I gotta like toughen up and like not be affected by these things, but become more aware of like, oh, I am affected by these things. And that knowledge can be empowering and not like a sad or shameful thing or feeling guilty or like no one else is like that. And I think that is honestly what's causing a lot of stress in the world, is people are like pushing those like innate things down about themselves because we're not taught like, what does it mean if like, oh, there's something about this environment that feels very like, it's hard for me, like even with my job now, there's no windows by where I work. And I'm very like sensitive to that. And I'm always complaining about it. I'm like, there's no, I need to see daylight. I am a plant. I need to see light on a regular basis or else it's not gonna like, these like halogen lights are not giving me anything. And I think, everyone just like kind of looks like, all right, Kia, but to me, it's a very natural thing. We're beings like anything else in this world. We're sensitive to water, light, temperature, the energy of other people. And to be aware of that, to me, can be like a powerful thing, but it's also like knowing how to deal with that and not feel, if there's someone who has negative energy, but you can't necessarily avoid them. Like, how do you manage environments like that?
So I was thinking about this. I was speaking with a colleague at the theater school, Christina Fludi, who's a dance teacher, choreographer, director. We were talking about it because I teach a course at Cook County Jail on storytelling. And I go inside every week for 2 hours with some DePaul students. It's a course called Inside Out. And so it's very fascinating to me what you're talking about, because there are different levels, right? There are people who are actually negative, and you can spot them by the way they carry themselves, and also by what they say. Like really, pretty much, it's like they're complaining all the time, or being critical all the time, or gossiping all the time, right? But then there are also situations in which the person is actually nice. I don't really try to use that. Nice and pretty, kind of out of my vocabulary, but but they're like agreeable, like or amiable, or they're not necessarily negative,
Right.
but there's something about them that makes you unsettled. There's something that makes you unsettled. Inside, the most of the students I work with don't unsettle me at all. I feel very comfortable there and very grateful to be there. The level of intimacy and depth of the work is paramount when because it's important, right? But there's something about the environment, and there's something unspoken and unseen that really I need to process all the time, right? So there are these two different situations, one outside in clubs or gatherings or friendships, etc., that just you pick up something from people that is not necessarily obvious. The workspace without a window, it's obvious to you, it's not obvious to somebody else, right? So inside there are no windows, or there are windows with bars or things like that. Or the other spectrum of that is somebody really negative in your life. So there are different ways to deal with that. Now, with family members or people you're really close with, there's a connection that is like what my friend Christina said. That's why I mentioned her earlier. Hormonal, almost, especially among women, right? There's something, or the pheromones, or the heart space. There's something that we don't perceive, that we don't see, but that is definitely there, and that kind of gets over you. And then in spaces or with people who have a lot of negativity inside of them because of their life, because of trauma, because of whatever happened to them, or their way of thinking. Also, there's a presence. It's a presence. It feels like a presence, right? So in order to make art and to let the teachings pass through without taking that on, what I do is that, first of all, before I go anywhere, I pray. I wear jewelry that is protective. So I wear malas that are made of onyx. I wear skulls a lot.
Is that tiger?
Yeah, this is a tiger eye.
Tiger eye.
Yeah, that helps. The tiger eye is connected to the third eye and the solar plexus together. Right, so the solar plexus is the strength, your strength. That's where you nourish yourself. That's where you connect. The third chakra, your solar plexus, however you want to call it. And then onyx or lava beads are just super powerful. They attract any negativity. And then skulls are really powerful to me. It's like honoring death is very powerful for me.
Can you talk more about that? What does it mean to honor death? Because there's a great fear of death in culture, and kind of similar to you. I remember I had I don't know if it was similar to you, but I remember I was probably maybe 10 years old and had read this book, which I don't even know if it's a true book anymore, but they proposed it was true, which was a diary of this young girl who contracted AIDS and died. And it was my first time ever experiencing death in that way. And I kind of spiraled for a period of 2 weeks where I was kind of I don't know what the point of this is. Why are we all here? It turned into a real existential crisis for me of just how do I know I'm not in a snow globe on a giant's desk? How do I know I'm not a puppet on a string? How do I know any of this has any meaning? And I don't think no one knew how to address those questions with me. And it wasn't really anything I felt I could even really verbalize to them. I just remember being super sad about it because it just felt like none of it had meaning. And I eventually had to, I think, just make a choice. I can't stay in this place. I'm only 10 years old. I have a whole, hopefully a lot of time in front of me where I have to do something with this time. I can't become bogged down by this idea of where am I really? But I think in that, made me less afraid of death because I kind of faced it in that way of just like, oh, I could die at any moment, or and so I don't feel as if I have a lot of that same anxiety, but I know that in American culture, we don't really have a lot for processing death or dealing with it or acknowledging it or even celebrating it as a part of this is just the life cycle. We have to, that's how we make room for this thing to continue. So what do you mean when you say that?
So well, we're all going there. We're all going to meet this great death eventually. It's been represented in different traditions with different icons. The skull helps because as long as you are a mammal, you have a skull. And our brains are inside the skull. And I think that that's important because the prefrontal cortex of human beings allows us to ask questions about death and to verbalize them like that. I think animals do that too. But we can really have a conversation about it, and make rituals around it.
Yeah.
Which some animals do too. So I think that's a big connection we have with the animal realm, is that death comes with a real powerful vibration. Like there's something about it. I hear a hum, like a really deep hum around death and dying. And the first time I had that experience was when I was in New York during 9/11. And I was paralyzed. I didn't know what I was going to do, what to do. I didn't know what to do. And I just sat. I sat and prayed. I wasn't too far from ground zero, so I heard the sirens. All of that was there. But I most especially heard this deep hum that was not a vibration from the excavation. And it wasn't there. It wasn't that. It was just something more like filled with terror and awe. It was huge. It was this huge hum, and it really kind of shocked me because I kind of looked for answers about death and dying since I was very young, and I also went through phases of depression where I welcomed death into my life without really ever attempting suicide, but I was close. And I was never afraid of it. Now, violent death, crimes, harassment, abuse, like that's different type of experiencing death, or trauma where part of your identity is killed like that. That's different. But the process of dying itself doesn't scare me. And I think the reason why I do the work that I do is because of that. Because when you enter a room and you're asking people to change, even though you're not asking them to die, you're asking them to allow a part of them to be let go of. And so if you're afraid of death as a healer, you're not going to be able to help as much. You need to slowly become acquainted, never comfortable. I'm not talking about being comfortable. I'm not comfortable. Right? Or even when I go inside county jail, I'm not comfortable, but I'm not afraid. It's different. There's always that type of it's a thin line between the living and the dead, but even in this room it's true, because I know that there's a veil that separates the perceived reality from presences. Things happen to me that are a little bit unusual, like I see things move around. I actually see them move, like I see that curtain move a lot, and then when I look at it, it doesn't move for 2 hours, it's like. But then because people are so afraid of death and the veil that we live in, they'll be like, oh, it was just a wind. Oh, it was just this. It was just that, and bring it back to this sensual reality. Sensual reality scares me more.
Really?
Yeah, because sensual reality is illusory, and it creates so much attachment for me. Like, I'm a very passionate person, I'm a very sensual person, and that's so hard because I get attached to everything. I get attached to friends, to lovers, to objects, to pleasure. I always want to feel pleasure all the time, and I have to be very mindful that that's the more pleasure I seek, the more suffering I will experience because it will be gone. It will be gone.
So how do you achieve balance in that? Like, I totally relate to just being like a passionate person, number one. But I think that's the way of the world that we live in, where we are taught to believe, like, if you have or possess these things, they will make you. Not even like make you happy, they will literally make you. And if you don't have those things, then you aren't anything. I've seen friends struggle because they're striving to achieve a certain title in their relationship, or having a relationship at all, and trying to achieve. I read a lot, actually, books about like non-attachment to things. Like, there's a book that I'm reading, I read kind of off and on, called Letting Go, and it's literally just about letting go and how much of the suffering that we experience is because of attachment, even emotional attachment. You have feelings, and so much when it's not a feeling that, it's not a happy feeling. We feel shame around that feeling, and it causes us to hold on to the feeling because we can't just be like, oh, I'm feeling jealous. And jealousy is such like a shameful emotion. Like, it feels so gross, and there's a part of my brain that's like, how could you? That's so immature. There's all these things, but then there's another part that's just like, you have to just feel it. Like, it's not, if you don't feel it, you're likely to do something more harmful or cause yourself more suffering, as opposed to just being like, I feel jealousy, and it's like happening right here, and I don't know why, or I'm not ready to know why, but I'm also okay with it. But I am curious of how you achieve that balance. And so much of life is just balance of like being able to hold two things that seem unrelated, or like they can't exist at the same time, but it's like, oh, but they exist at the same time, and being able to hold those things. So how do you hold? I'm a passionate person who just loves and feels and needs, but I also fully understand that could be my entire downfall.
Totally. It's a process. It's really fascinating to me because you cannot achieve it rationally. It's not rational. It is a balancing act between will, discipline, and honesty, and mind control. So here's the thing that I learned in India when I was there studying yoga, which then I found. So it went retroactively. Like, I studied alchemy and Renaissance art in Italy first, because I'm from Florence, Italy, and growing up I studied art there. And I'm actually from Siena, but I say Florence because all my people from Siena are gonna be like, hey, no, let's clarify this. But I say Florence because for the majority of people it's easier to know where that is. But so I studied that, and then I lived in India and studied there, and I realized that so much from what we know of alchemy and Florentine Renaissance came from North Africa, the Islamic culture, Jewish culture, Egyptian, and then eventually also from India, right? So, but anyway, I went there, and it dawned on me that the mind has a sphere of power and of action that is immensely bigger than the body. So, and beyond that is a sphere of bliss, like our galaxy is blissful. It's complex. There are stars and black energy that are constantly like going in this dance, explosions, electric light, and magnetism, and it's just beautiful, right? But it's blissful. It's like, wow. And when you look at images, right, of the galaxy, it's just like, something happens, right? And you're like, oh. You want to become one with that. You don't care at all about the stories.
Right.
You just want to merge with that.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then there's wisdom. On our planet, in our solar system, there's wisdom, the sphere of wisdom. Then there's the sphere of the mind, and that's individualistic, and it's culturally specific, but because we speak a language, and those languages impact the way we see reality. We'll talk about storytelling, maybe next to this, but so there's the mind, and in the mind we have these patterns of thinking, like, oh, okay, so if you're, the labels, woman, man, trans, behaving like this in Chicago, you do this, in New York, you do that, in this county, you do this, in this county, okay, well, all of the stuff starts to then get into our physical and emotional bodies, right? The emotional body and then the physical body. To answer your questions, like how do you balance the both, is that the problem that we have is that when we are based in a sensual reality, we base all of our choices on the smallest power that we have, which is the body. Right? So, I mean, I love, of course, clothes and jewelry. I'm not saying that that's great, but if I move around with my body and my drives and my, sexual drive is huge and it connects to death. I don't know, maybe we'll have a series of this talk.
Oh, I'm very curious about that.
Maybe this is a series, everybody, actually. Maybe this is a monthly series.
I love having conversations with us. So.
Maybe, yeah. But so I feel like the way that I balance this is that I know that the body, because the body is what I know for sure, because it's tangible.
Mm-hmm.
So I go around and I move around and just But then I also know that the most powerful tool I have is my mind. Is my mind, not my body. Because my mind decides the attitude. Well, the body moves around and something can happen to the body. Like I can hug, I can meet a new friend, I can manipulate the computer, I can get a Ventra card, I can travel back to Italy. Like that's mostly what we do. I can get more money, I can get a ring, I get a deck, I get an apartment, like all of this. That's what most people think life is the movement of the body and space around, right? But the mind is what makes you decide the intent, the path you want to take, what you want to do with your body, and how to elevate your spirit so that your soul, which is totally intangible, can fully express, the soul. So the way that I balance this is very, it's hard. It's mostly study. I study myself most of the time. Like I spend a lot of time in this place right here. Or even when I'm out and about, I constantly fully engage and then pull back and observe, like the workshop, in fact, right? It's like you're fully in and then you pull back and you feel and you think. Then you think, adapt the feeling, adapt the body, and go on. So for example, I know that I want to attract more prosperity. As an example, right? Or I know that I want to get a beautiful home. These are all very valid. I want a relationship. I want to get married. There's no problem in what you want. But then most of us are like, oh, I want this, I want that, and then that's it. Instead of really making sure that no doubt permeates their mind. No fear permeates their mind. And this is the hardest battle. This one here is the hardest battle. And it's been written about in religion, art, spiritual traditions around the world at all times. 10,000 years ago, it will be talked about 10 million years ago for humans.
Right.
Because humans are naturally afraid. We're animals. We're naturally afraid to die. There we go back. So our mammalian and reptilian brains are constantly like, like the survival mode. Like, okay, well, there's one cool woman or one cool man or one cool, So intersexual person, whomever it is that we're attracted to,
Right.
right? And then we're like, there's only one of them, and there's three of us. Like, I can be your best friend 1 minute and push you away to get to the target.
Yeah.
That's my animal brain.
Yeah.
Right? But if I am mindful, but that doesn't happen often, especially not in a city,
Yeah.
because we're all constantly like, but if I am mindful and I'm like, wow, what am I trying to get here? Because other people are always a reflection of something that we need to provide ourselves in. So that intersexual person or that man, woman, trans woman, that object of my desire, the job even, like whatever, right? The ring, the car, they're a validation of something that I can give myself anyway.
Yeah.
But that's harder because it's lonely.
Yeah.
It's fucking lonely.
Yeah. It really, I have had sort of a similar revelation of just like, oh, it's all you. It's just you.
Really
It's just you. And it's awesome if you have people around you who can augment it, but they cannot give it to you, and they can't take it away, which is kind of a nice thing, because a lot of times we'll be tricked into thinking that someone took something from me, or they robbed me of this, or they did me dirty, and trying to just like think of it like it was just an experience. You came out of it learning whatever you need to learn if you stay conscious to it and don't get trapped into the narrative of whatever best edifies your ego of like, no, because this person and that person, like I've realized some of the greatest teachers in my life are the people who have hurt me, just people who really challenge me in ways that I'm just like, this feels illogical, how I'm being challenged by this person. But if I can go one step higher of that and be like, well, obviously they're showing you something, and don't be mad at that person. That is really like my personal challenge, that like I have someone specifically like in my universe where I'm just like, oh man, it's so easy to get sucked into some negativity, and to challenge myself, just like that person is playing their own game. We all have our own mental universe of like, I'm the star and everybody else is, acting in my play, and they're either doing me harm or doing me good. And it's like, but every person is literally doing that. So it makes society pretty amazing that we can still find common ground of being like, well, we both want to have a place to stay. Let's work on building a building. But that so much of life is just balance. And then I think being comfortable in moments of imbalance, because maybe that imbalance leads to a greater balance. I don't know. I've read a lot of different things that are like, either all things are suffering, don't be attached to anything. Also things that are like, I read Be Here Now by Ram Dass, and he was just doing a very Western take on what was it, Hinduism, and how it's like, oh, you're just gonna do what you're gonna do, and there's nothing else that you're gonna do, so you have no choice. Kind of like, even if you resist or you do or do not, it's happening either which way. And then the idea is that, like, the secret and manifesting things in your mind, and it's trying to achieve balance in those things, because I think they're all true to a certain extent. Like, I've definitely experienced like intense seasons of the ability to make things happen, of just thinking something and not having that fear or doubt, just knowing it in a very like poof, and it's there. And it's wild when you hit that sort of lick of like, oh, I'm calling people out of the universe left and right. Like, it was the trippiest thing. But then once it like fell off because of maybe it just had to stop, falling into a deep sort of valley of like, I don't know what I'm doing, or why I'm here, or how to control it, or was that all very foolish, or just trying to find that balance. Like, do you have what is your ideology around like wanting things, but also realizing that wanting things brings you suffering? And I'm sure maybe you also feel that ability of like being able to call things into existence minus the fear and doubt.
Well, yeah, I'm just, that's very powerful. Like, I think, well, right now, for example, I'm really I'm struggling with change. It's fascinating, like especially when it relates to attachment to specific people that are moving away from my life. And what I mean by that is that they're not, calling back or they're not showing up, and but I feel this attachment towards them, and I say I love them, but I don't know if that's what it is, because love is not supposed to be attached like that, right? So that's complicated for me. Like, okay, why? So if I love this person, why am I always upset? I don't know, stuff like that, which a lot of us deal with, especially with people we're close with or family members, right? And it gets really complex. I don't have an actual answer for it, except that I just watch my mind all the time. I watch my mind all the time, and I watch the relationship that there is between what I eat, drink, and my mind. Like, I know there's a deep relationship between sugar and doubt.
That's true. Sugar and alcohol, really
It's
bad.
huge.
Really bad.
Bad.
The attachment to sugar and alcohol is also really hard to beat. But I felt the same thing.
It's huge.
Of just like paying attention. It's funny, I want to ask you, when you say you watch your mind, who is watching your mind? Like what are those, the mind is watching the mind?
Yeah.
It kind of can separate and like.
Yeah, it can separate. The mind can watch, a mind well trained can watch itself work.
How do you train your mind to watch?
Focus. You focus. Like, you focus on observing yourself. It's not, and that's what an artist does anyway. So it's not that difficult. What's difficult is the sustained diligence.
Mm-hmm.
What's difficult is the practice. And not giving in to the fear, because the capacity, this is the capacity of the prefrontal cortex, is that the mind can observe the mind. Like, the rest is the habitual pattern. Just because we've had a reptilian brain in our medulla, in the corpus callosum in the back, right here, and then the mammalian brain have been there much longer than the prefrontal cortex. So habitually, we're not observing anything. We're just going about and around. And yeah, we may read a book. I'm not saying you or somebody here, but in general, we read a book, but then observing ourselves takes so much discipline. It takes so much strength and so much courage that most people will go back into the habit of not observing themselves.
Yeah.
Unless something really dramatic happens, in good or bad. But the mind can definitely, we're now observing our own minds. Right now, we're doing that. While at the same time speaking from a place of emotion and empathy, being mindful that there's a video here, like, it can all happen at the same time. So this whole idea, that you're gonna be like,
right.
That's not what I mean.
Okay.
What I mean is not like you're gonna be like, because who has the time, frankly, even what I mean is that, for example, making a choice between wanting and craving something, giving into that or not. That's the mind observing the mind. For example, attending an event when you know there's going to be a person who's going to unsettle you, but you really want to see them. Or you really want to get that tiny little edge off and have a glass of wine, but all of a sudden you finish the whole bottle. That, there's a moment there, or like having the whole pint of ice cream versus 5 spoonfuls.
Yeah.
There's a moment in which you give in.
Yeah.
Because it's this very well, right? It's not about not having. Well, I mean, if you're not having alcohol, then it's great, but it's not really not about not going out and seeing people or not having wine, or it's not about that. It's just like that you really want that, but if you go over that edge, if you go to the club, if you finish the bottle, if you have the whole pint, you will lose
the ability.
Yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it. So then you find yourself with your butt on the ground again,
right,
feeling sorry for yourself.
Right.
And they're checking
still
people's Instagrams.
The mind knows.
The mind knows. And that's the thing, is like the mind always knows. It's just a matter of uplifting it. It's like, I'm gonna honor you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna trust you.
Yeah, and have that sense of self-discipline. I've been trying to
Yes.
do that whole mind body around food, because I'll
Yes.
find like if I'm having like a good day, I want food. If I'm having a bad day, I want food. But then I'm like, wait, what does your stomach say? And my stomach's like, I don't care. Like, I'm actually not, like, I know what it feels like to be hungry, and 9 times out of 10, it's my mind being like, ooh, but have some of this. It'll make you feel, it'll get that little dopamine, serotonin, like whatever little hit you're wishing to feel from an intellectual mind space, but not, my body is actually like, we're happiest when you eat vegetables.
With a like prayer gesture.
We really like water. 8 hours of sleep. Like, right, exactly. But my mind is like, ooh, let's have some tequila. And just.
You mean now? Yeah.
Right, always. Because it's like, if there's any sort of emotional, mental discomfort, the mind rushes in to fill that in with like something to eliminate it or make it worse. 9 times out of 10. It tricks you into thinking like it's gonna eliminate it, but it's like, no, it's.
So what I want to say about this, and because you're very passionate and very skilled as a storyteller to tell stories and think about stories and things like that, is that one of the narratives that so it's a practice. It's a daily practice. It's like I listen to things all the time. Like I listen to motivational books. I generally tend to go to the source. Like there's so much going on now that I tend not to listen to too wishy-washy, like, be happy now, your life is awesome. Like, because that's so privileged and oftentimes very white, actually, that it's like, it makes you cringe. I tend to go back to really old spiritual traditions because people have been dealing with this for the longest time. And I don't mean to judge or anything. Like, everybody will find whatever they need.
Right.
But I also want to make sure in sending this message out that, people are mindful of really doing the work. Like listening or creating a storyboard are great, but also be mindful of your limits. Go to the source. What is your fear? Because the thing is, like, a lot of us will listen to programs or watch things or whatever and be like, visualize this, do all of these positive things here, and never really acknowledge the fear. Because the fear, eventually, looking back to a little earlier, is the fear of death. Okay, it's the fear of death. We're all afraid to die. We're all afraid to die. It's scary. It's like we don't want to die because the animal body doesn't want to die. So the training of the mind really comes in to say, how is the fear of death manifesting for you right now? Like, if I decide not to go to the club and not to be in the person's presence, what am I afraid of? Because it's not that important. It's like life will go on. It's not like, we're not talking like I'm going to go save somebody. I can go to a club. It's not. Right. But sometimes, or like, don't have tequila, just have a glass of water. But it feels like a life and death thing in the moment, doesn't it? Like grabbing that ice cream or that shot. Like, if I don't do this, I'm going to die. I need this, right? So what is that? So we're buffering. What we're doing is that we're really like shutting, or whatever this verb is, like shutting down the fear of death. In terms of like going out to the club, for example, the death is that I'll be forgotten, which is a form of death.
Yeah.
The death of my ego. It's death of a part of my personality, is that somebody who is so magnetizing for me will forget me. I will not matter.
Yeah.
I will not matter to them. So instead of being like, why do I want to go out? Or like, stressing out about going out, just go back inside. It's like, what is the fear? The fear is that I'm not loved. Right? That I want to be loved. So I don't really want to go to the club because it makes me feel good. Because I'm going to spend money drinking. It's going to be bad for my liver. I'm going to spend money on the Uber. I'm like, when you look at it, and then I'm going to be miserable because maybe the person isn't there, or maybe they're flirting with somebody.
Are there, yeah.
I mean, like, I've been through it already, so, and I'm like, this is happening now, so, but I know that the person is not going to watch this, so that's the other thing.
Maybe they will, but it won't.
No, they won't.
Because the source is you.
But that's the thing, is like, I know that the person is going through this same thing with another person. And that's why they're not able to. It's just so fascinating, because we're all going through the same thing all the time. We're all escaping our meeting with death by building our personalities, building our empires, building this, building that, getting things, getting lovers, getting followers on Instagram, whatever it is.
Right.
Getting a new job, getting a new. This is all good, but at the same. So this is how I watch the mind. It's like I'm sitting here, and most of the time I'm like, why am I feeling this? What is it? Like it takes, and it's just sometimes so, it feels so weird because the decision is about going to a club.
Yeah.
It's not about, okay, I'm going to drop my job, quit my job to go on a trip to save this plant. That's like, it's not like
those decisions are easier to make. And I was like, should I go to the club? But those, you acknowledge, like, this is the narrative my mind is telling. It serves me no good to ignore it or to be like, that's, it's not important. It doesn't matter. Like, if your mind is stuck on it, it's important. And you might as well just sit with it.
You're stuck on it.
Right. Okay, well, why am I stuck here? What am I looking for? And what does that mean? And sometimes it can definitely spiral. So I think also maintaining that sense of control over it is just like it's an art. It's a real art and practice. But I understand that moment and have been in those moments or starting to acknowledge it and cultivate that awareness of like watching myself. Watching my body.
Oh,
like last night. Yeah, even last night, me and my partner, we were supposed to meet up, and then he didn't show up, and then I got mad, and I thought I wasn't mad anymore because we had a text conversation, but then I was also like energetically like tense and exhausted and weird because I had drank earlier in the day, and then I had an espresso on top of it. So then my energy was just so weird where it got to the point where I was like, oh, and my stomach is growling, but my mind wasn't hungry because my mind was stuck on like all these things, how I thought the things should be going, that I was just like, let me get some food and go home and just go by myself because I could tell nothing good is going to come out of this. I'm hungry, I'm tired, I have alcohol and caffeine still in my body, and all these different things have happened where the best thing I can do is just say like, I need to be alone because otherwise I'm going to do damage. There's a part of me that wants to
fight.
It wants to start a conflict out of just expressing that tension within myself, coming out as an argument so I could take some energy from you, or I could put my energy on you, or I could make a fucking, horrible mask out of my energy and then, not have to just sit with whatever, all those things, all those different things that are like working within me that are just making it very confusing.
And then the problem is that you have to deal with the repercussions the following day.
Yes.
And a lot of us live our lives fixing things we fucked the night before.
Yeah, no, that's a big thing for. Another lesson I've learned, even in conflict, of being like, if you're trying to resolve conflict, but your conflict causes more conflict, now I'm spending my time apologizing for how I reacted to what you did that was already wrong, but my reaction was wrong. So now
Yeah.
we're not even dealing with the thing,
Yeah.
and just developing that sense of discipline and self-control
Yes.
in general, which is just
Yes.
maybe my question. I'm really curious to hear from you is, what do you think is the meaning of life? Or why are we here?
Wow.
I know that's a big.
We have 5 minutes left.
I know that's
I
why
wanna-
let me end.
No, that's good. That's great. I'm gonna end it at an hour. Wow, the meaning of life. My God, I was thinking about this morning as I'm preparing to possibly leave Chicago in August because my contract here with DePaul University ends in August. And I'm thinking, okay, do I want to go back to Europe? Do I want to look for another job here? It's like, why? What is it? What is the meaning of life? So wonderful. The meaning of life for me is spiritual evolution. The meaning of life for me is really being able to achieve this. It's a balance, but it's an integration even. It's an integrated balance, I guess, between fully living and being joyous and being in this body and just feeling everything, and at the same time having this very, almost like it feels like an ice, like it's like a nice, cool, subtle focus on just connecting back up to the galaxy. You know, it's just like it really feels thin, very quiet, almost like a cave, like a cathedral made of ice. I don't know. It's a very particular type of feeling I get, but I know what it is. And it's serene. It's just this serene, and there's no passion, there's no fire, there's no like heat and drives, and you know, it's really just like, like that. And so just to feel that, and then, but then also being very present, being very, very loving.
Yeah.
I want to love, you know. I don't want to be like, you know, on a yoga mat, walking around, you know.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. So the meaning of life for me is that I don't really have a vision of things that I want to do that are the meaning of life. Like I want to be married, I want to have children, I want to buy a restaurant, I want to buy a condo. Like I don't have that, which has been the biggest problem I've had forever. So I don't have my goal in life is not something tangible. It's like a process. It's a process that is meaningful to me. It's like that balance is meaningful to me, and then whatever I can put my mind to achieving, maybe sure, a house would be nice, a beautiful home, a sustainable home would be awesome, off the grid, a great community, making sure that I'm able to take care of my family back in Italy, teach, perform. These are all wonderful, you know, have access to water. You know, those are great. That's not the meaning of life is when time comes to die, I'm serene. That's like because I can feel the presence of death. It's very feminine. It's like a black hole. It's like I'm the star. I'm just gonna be like down. Oh, but if I'm all like
right, and all these things,
which is how I mostly like. I have to control my mind. Like, I'm going to the club. Oh no, let me have a drink before I go to the club. Like when you look at the club choice that we were talking about before, in light of that moment, it's like whatever, man.
Yeah.
But and I'll ask you the same question. But then the question that I have for myself and others is like, what does that mean practically? What does that mean practically? Like, do I want to be married? Do I want a partner? Because like, do I want to make money? Do I need money? Do I not need money? Because if your goal in life is not something tangible, then it's like, do I sit here and wait? Like, is that okay? This is enough then. If I just sit here and think about this, then I'm done. It's good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. So what about you? What is your
Well, I mean, I think in that vein, it's like being able to hold those two different ideas in your head of like, Yeah, definitely that serenity. And I think me being more mindful of like the things that I ask God, the universe, whatever, for, and being like, oh, I want this and I want that. But then I'm trying to learn to be like, you'll get those things, and then you'll be like, and then I want this,
yes,
and that. You
that's
know,
the
like
thing.
you'll get the house, and then you'll be like, well, I want to change the bathrooms, and then you'll change the bathrooms, like, but now I got to do the kitchen. Like, there's always
So
more
true.
things to want, and so it's more so like for me, like, oh, in that serene space of just like, oh, I want health. I want the people around me to be okay. You know, I want peace. It's very important to me. It's something me and my partner always used to be like, you know, I just want you to be happy. And I'm like, I don't know, something about the word happy to me. I'm glad you get it. Because he's like, I'm like, I don't know, happy, and maybe it's just, I mean, language is just whatever, but happy to me just feels
nice.
cheap or something.
It's
I'm like,
cheap.
I want to be at peace.
That's right.
I want to like, because I think happiness, it just feels like a lot of pressure to be happy. Whereas I'm like, listen, I'm going to have good days. I'm going to have bad days. I have a lot of emotions. I learned to embrace all of those emotions because they make me more empathetic. They help me understand the world around me. And so I'm never going to deny myself, like, don't be sad, be happy. That's so much pressure. Maybe I need to feel sad sometimes, you know, and I was explaining it to him, like, I don't want to, like, be a sunny day. I want to be the sun of, like,
hey, wow.
Like, the sun's still there. It's just a cloudy day. It's just dark right now, but the sun's still there. And that's, like, for me, like, getting back to the meaning of life, like, I think some of it is just, like, for us all to be together. In that struggle, you know, sometimes I'll, like, fantasize about a utopia. And, like, well, it would be like this, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, everyone has to come. Everyone, and that is such, like, a humbling and scary thing to be like, we got to take Donald Trump with us. I don't want to take him. I don't want to take the hateful, mean, evil people, but we're all in this together. There's no eliminating anyone. And the illusion that we can, or the illusion that we can control, or the illusion that I'm going to make every reality my reality, or force everyone into my reality is just like, we all just have to come and be in that struggle and be at peace in that struggle, knowing that it's going to be rainy some days and it's going to be sunny some other days, and some days we're going to be on the beach, and other days we might be in a fiery pit, but we'll all be together. Even if that togetherness is very much like a solo act of me being with myself, you know, because I think also everything is very like meta and micro. Like if I want to look for the truest thing, it's going to be very, very small and specific, but that's how it becomes universal. Like I can't come up with any laws or rules that could apply to everyone, but if I come up with something that applies to me, that's more universal than trying to, I don't know, like I it's hard for me to like verbalize, but it definitely turns into something like, oh, it's just very emotional or very much like in my body, like language actually doesn't sufficiently express it, but I do experience that sort of like when I'm quiet enough to just be in a space, that humbling beauty that's just like amazing, where you're just like, how is this all, like it brings tears to my eyes every time, just because it is just like, this is a beautiful thing that's also incredibly painful, but it's also so beautiful in the pain. Like that we can just, like sometimes if I feel upset and I really pay attention to my body, and I'm like, oh wow, that like, it's in my spine and it burns, and I can actually be impressed by it, of just like, oh, I'm in so much pain, and it's like blooming like a flower, you know, and just like being with it. But it's, you know, then I'm back in my human form and I'm like, I want children. You know, it's just like you get this moment of divinity and then you're like, oh, I want some ice cream. Like, and that's the beauty of it. That's how I feel it. So
thank you so much.
You. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all for watching, if you're watching. Yeah, and perhaps we'll do more and we'll talk more.
I would love that.
Yeah.
And really, I love having opportunities to talk about this stuff. I think it's really good for my spirit. So,
Yeah, thank you. Hugs. So on this note, stay together.
look for the Amazon link for the Florida.
Maybe I'll see you at the club. No. I don't think so. Bye. Thank you for
Bye.
watching. Bye.